All right, cut and print. Beautiful, guys. Dynamite.
Classical music is something as a musician is the first foundation that you learn and is the beginning to all music. But with our generation, it's hard to make connections to something that started many years ago. So let's find out how to make these connections.
Because of its history of, coming out of the nobility, coming out of the aristocracy, that it is kind of an elitist kind of art to be appreciated. And a lot of times, even though it was mainstreamed into people's lives, and this is the thing that they did for their entertainment and enjoyment, we kind of lost touch with that culturally as we get into the 20th century. So there's a small amount of the population who very much heavily connects with classical music because that is part of their upbringing and their training. They may have family members that engaged in singing and performing. And then we have on our side, I would say African American side of culture, not so much those kinds of traditions in our families growing up.
Music was created by those who were the musically intelligent ones of their generation. Like, they treated music like a science almost. Because a lot of classical composers, they often wrote out their pieces before even hearing what they sounded like. And I mean, that's astounding in itself. Classical is kind of like I would say the Bible of musicianship, but it's like when you want to hear what all music came from, classical music, it definitely can provoke your emotions. Like, there's been pieces of music I've heard that made me shed a tear before, and it has no words in it at all. Like, just because of the sound, and for a piece of music to do that without even saying anything, that's powerful right there. And I feel like you can only experience that in classical music, to that degree at least.
I think hip hop's really interesting because there's this whole conversation, right? Is hip hop, specifically rap, is rap actually music, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and I disagree with some of my colleagues. I do believe it's music because there is a beat. There's a beat, there's rhythm, there's melody. So I can't say it's not music. I'm not saying all rap music is musical, but not all classical music of the 21st century is musical either. I think it's actually something that helps people, especially African American people, express themselves in a way that is truly theirs. Mm-hmm. What I will say is interesting is finding artists in hip hop who aren't African American, but who have been so influenced by the culture and by their surroundings that it becomes part of them as well.
The hip hop from the 80s and the 90s and even the beginning of the late 70s and all that, I mean, when anything first gets its traction and first gets attention, that's always going to be like probably one of his best time periods, is because that's when it's fresh to everybody and it hasn't been seen, it hasn't been heard. So hip hop, of course, a lot of people are gonna say hip hop in the past was better and it had content and all this other stuff. But you gotta think, back then a lot of that stuff was unheard of. And I mean, when it's new, it's gonna be popular. Simple as that. Time has went by and a lot of people don't like the hip hop today. I mean, a lot of the stuff, honestly, I wouldn't even consider hip hop because you gotta think about the meaning of hip hop. So I mean, it's real rare that an artist today is doing actual hip hop. It may be genre as hip hop or labeled as hip hop, but in reality, it's most likely something other than that.
And one of those light bulb moments always occurs when we can see and really take a moment to dissect what classical music means. For example, I played an example today from Don Giovanni, And then I began to talk a little bit about Mozart's personal struggles with his father and some of the relational issues that he was experiencing through his lifetime with his father. And because they were able to connect to that and understanding and relating, personal issues with family members, we get that. But what they didn't necessarily capture was, how is that expressed in the art and why is that relevant? And so sometimes we have to show those basic human commonalities that a lot of people experience but sometimes never really talk about.
The connection isn't made by the classical composers, of course. The connection is between was more so the producers in hip hop, because a lot of popular hip hop songs, a lot of good hip hop beats, and a lot of stuff is sampled often from classical music. And I feel like that is a pure connection in the musical universe right there, when you see two different sides of the spectrum connecting and making something great come out of it. Like when I hear hip hop producers sample classical music, sample old jazz records, sample anything that's like really unconventional to that genre, I always find that I like seeing it or hearing it, because at the end of the day, all music serves the same purpose, to a certain degree. Like
I would say is one of the next, because I think there are other genres besides just hip hop that are going to be forming a classical repertoire. Yes, that people are going to say 50 years from now, yep, that song was instrumental in making change. That song was important to our culture. Do you understand? Fight the Power is an example, right? So there are pieces, yes, that are coming to the forefront that are 10, 20 years old now, that people can say, yeah, these are important pieces, right? So I think it is starting to, but it's in its infancy stage. What I will say is that, we talked a little bit about rules, how hip hop is kind of breaking the rules and doing all that. Well, that's what happened in classical music too. That's how different periods of time emerged in classical music. Right? Because you had the Baroque period and they're going along and they're chilling and they're playing counterpoint. And then all of a sudden they said, hold up, we don't like that anymore. Let's change it. Everything needs to be in the Galant style, where everything is singable and everything is simple, not complicated. So then that changes, right? And it becomes less about objective beauty and becomes all about subjective beauty in the Romantic period. And it's all about angst and love and death and supernatural and all that stuff. That's the Romantic period. And then it changes again, right? And so we're seeing that same kind of those transitions happening in hip hop.
Right.
The issue is, again, we do not have people studying it, writing about it, and publishing about it, talking about it in a way that musicologists who are trained classically can read and appreciate. Again, those people haven't graduated. Or they're starting to. And so that's the reason why it hasn't happened. Classical music has been around long enough to achieve all of that. Right? Hip hop has really only been along since the 70s.
Right.
How can you compete against something that's really been around, let's just say, common practice era 1600? We're talking over 400 years. So it hasn't, 40 years versus 400 years. 40 years versus 400 years. We will get there.
You believe hip hop will
I think it will. Yeah, I think so. Why not? Why not?